Welcome on in, WIP Daily. Joe Giglio with you. Appreciate everyone subscribing, following, listening, of course, watching the podcast here on our 94 WIP YouTube page. Leave comments, leave your ratings, and we'll take whatever you have to say, including your questions for a mailbag episode coming up soon here. Tucker Bag will join me in a few minutes as the Phillies continue to roll, really playing their best baseball. I mean, this is good, and the Phillies are really putting themselves in great position to not only make the playoffs, but to be the number one wild card. It feels like the next wave, right? So you have the division winners, the division leaders, and I think they're all going to win their division. But Braves, obviously, the Dodgers in the West, and Milwaukee's opened up a pretty nice lead in the Central. So they're ahead. And then you have the Phillies, like they live in their own little world as clearly the top wild card. And then there's a scrum of about 5 teams all just going to cannibalize each other until the last week of the season for those final 2 spots. The Phillies are in a great space, considering it's almost, you go back before they expanded the playoffs, and there used to be this thing where if you had 2 great teams in a division, Yankees, Red Sox were like this for a period of time during kind of the height of that rivalry. By the time you got to a certain period of the season, you realize they're both going to the playoffs, and it's just a matter of who's going to win the division or not. And then if one had kind of jumped 5 or 6 or 7 games over the other, that wild card team, which is kind of the Phillies in this analogy, they're not really chasing anybody because they can't catch the Braves. And obviously, really, I don't think anyone's going to catch them if they continue to play like this. So it's a good spot for the Phillies to be in. The offense has been electric, over 50 home runs in the month of August. Trey Turner has, had the best month we've seen by not even close to any of the other months. Like just an incredible month for Trey Turner to really put his season back. And he's got a chance to end this as having about an average season, which seemed impossible about 3 weeks ago. So great run by Trey, Bryce Harper's power, all that. The offense has been incredible. They're up to 10th now in runs per game. And I think there's even a great feeling about Zach Wheeler and even Aaron Nola turning a corner. So if there's one major thing we need to figure out and the Phillies need to figure out between now and the start of the postseason, it's who slots in next. Wheeler 1. I'm comfortable with Aaron Nola 2, and he's got the highest upside to be your number 2 starter in the postseason, and we've seen him do it before. Okay. Then what about Game 3? And Game 3 is an interesting conversation to have because big picture in the playoffs, it's important. But small picture, it's even more important. We know the wild card series is a best of 3, and you might say, Joe, listen, they're gonna knock out the Giants or the Cubs or the Diamondbacks in 2 at Citizens Bank Park. This doesn't matter. Well, it does because number 1, they might not knock them out in 2. They might have to play a Game 3 to advance to the NL Division Series. And number 2 on this scenario, there's not many days off in October with the extra rounds they've put in. So we'll look at the exact dates, but I don't think the pitchers that pitch 1 and 2 could come back and pitch Game 1, or at least it'd be more challenging to pitch Game 1, based on that scenario. I'm thinking back to last year and the NL wild card series against the Braves. The Phillies, I don't think they were able to bring their pitchers back the same 1 and 2. I mean, you have to have a third starter. Let's put it that way. You have to have a third starter to pitch in the postseason and significantly pitch. You get away with the 4th, like the Phillies did last year, but you need that number 3 to pitch and take the ball. So here's my perspective. And I know Taijuan Walker leads the Phillies in wins. Like last time was win number 14. Old school feeling on Taijuan Walker's like, wow, he's 14-5. You watch him though, and I'm just never that impressed. He's fine. He's obviously settled in. April, May, he was pretty bad, and he's been better since then. He's settled in. But I never feel fully comfortable when Taijuan Walker's on the mound. And although he's been the most durable, dead arm about 2 weeks ago, but for the most part, he's been durable, not on the IL. He's been durable. He's been okay, solid, pretty good the entire year. I don't trust him in October. And you think about his issues, which are always seemingly in the first inning, and do you want that in a Game 3, a deciding game against the Giants or the Cubs? Bellinger up there, or whatever platoon guy the Giants used that day, Wilmer Flores, Lamont Wade, boom, home run to start the game, and the Phillies are down 1-0 or 2-0 early. I don't in an elimination game like that would be nerve-wracking. So I'm not comfortable with Taijuan Walker as my Game 3 starter. And then you fast forward, let's say they sweep that first round, they get to Atlanta. You want Walker in one of those first 2 games in Atlanta? I don't. So despite his record, despite how he's been solid, he settles down, I don't have a good feeling on Taijuan Walker. So the other options are Michael Lorenzen, who will watch pitch tonight, Christopher Sanchez, who has shockingly put himself in the conversation. I don't think we could just throw Sanchez away and say he's not part of the conversation. And then there's Michael Lorenzen. So all of them come with some upside. All of them come with some downside. And it's why I think it's going to be difficult for the Phillies to make this decision. Like the next month really is about who's the number 3 starter in the playoffs. Can they get JT more rest? Can they keep the offense going? Make sure everyone is healthy? That rest versus rust debate that I'm sure we're going to have down the last 2 weeks of the season. How much do they give these guys days off versus not? Can Bryce Harper play more first base so they keep Schwarber out of the outfield in the playoffs? All these are the questions we're going to have and the Phillies are going to have to figure out as we get closer to the playoffs. But nothing tops the number 3 starter. That's a critical question. Now, as I sit here today, Lorenzen, who will go tonight, certainly is put himself at the top of the list just because he's pitched the most effectively at his best the last month. But I come back to Ranger Suarez, and he faced hitters yesterday. The plan is on this next road trip when the Phillies are finally done at home and they go to, I think it's Milwaukee, San Diego at the end of the week, into next week, that Ranger Suarez could jump back in the rotation. That this probably won't take a minor league rehab assignment, but whatever. It doesn't matter. If it takes another week or so, Ranger Suarez probably back soon coming off the hamstring. As I sit here today, my trust factor is just with Ranger. Ranger Suarez, I trust him. It's based on years of watching him get big outs in any role. Last year in October, we know what he did in every role. If you're telling me right now that there's an elimination game, game 3, it's 1-1 against the Giants or the Cubs or the Diamondbacks at Citizens Bank Park in early October, and everybody's rested, everybody's healthy. Wheeler went 7 in game 1. Nola went 6 1/3 in game 2. Nobody is so taxed that they had to, no one got knocked out in the first inning, so they had to put Ranger or Lorenzen in it. Everybody's up, right? Everyone's available. I'm handing the ball to Ranger Suarez to start the game. That's my guy. I'm handing it to him, and then I'm piggybacking him with a guy like Michael Lorenzen coming out of the bullpen. We know he's done that before. He throws hard, and then I'll try to get with those two to the back end of my bullpen. That's the way I would set up a game 3. Now, as you move forward through the postseason, it gets a little more complicated because it really, I think it hurts the Phillies if they can't or don't want to use Taijuan Walker. He's not a reliever. He's strictly a starter. Meanwhile, Lorenzen and Ranger give you options out of the bullpen as you move through the playoffs. You get to a 5-game NL wildcard series, divisional series. You get to a 7-game NLCS World Series. It helps. If Walker makes more sense as a starter, he's just hard for me to trust. So maybe you keep him around, I don't know, like Kyle Gibson role. So if you're up 3-1 in a series or up 2-1, you could throw him out there and hope for the best. I don't know. Walker has not pitched badly to where he has no place on this team. But I'm also just kind of stacking the options here, and I trust Ranger Suarez more. I like Michael Lorenzen's stuff more, even though he has had, he's reaching that innings limit. He's getting to that point now where we don't know what his arm's going to look like September, October, and he has a lot of bullpen experience to kind of lean on. So I think the versatility helps Lorenzen be a big part of this, but maybe hurts him as a starter. And then before we bring Tucker in, there's the element of Christopher Sanchez, which I don't know if the Phillies foresaw this. I'll say it this way. There's no way they foresaw this because they kept him at AAA for most of the year, a lot of the year, as they didn't have a 5th starter. So they obviously didn't believe he could be this good. And now he is. Christopher Sanchez has made 13 starts. He has a 3.33 earned run average. This isn't 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 starts. It's a good amount. He's pitched 70 innings. He's allowed way less hits than innings pitched. He doesn't walk many batters. He strikes out almost a batter an inning. If you look at adjusted ERA, he's been the best guy in the rotation. All of that is real. Now, you look at his fielding independent pitching, which takes everything into account, walks, strikeouts, home runs allowed, like things that are typically in the pitcher's control. It's okay. It's a little bit better than Walker. It's better than Lorenzen. It's not quite as good as Ranger Suarez. So he's kind of in that middle there, but he's been more effective. I think the next month or so is going to be critical to finding out. Number one is can Ranger get healthy? And can he look himself? That's one. 2, what is the state of Lorenzen's arm? Is he feeling fresh heading into October? Is he really available as a starter? Or are we going to trend towards the bullpen game or the bullpen role for Lorenzen? And we could also come back to all those pitches they let him throw in that no-hitter, which was electric, but I don't know. He hasn't looked really the same to me since then. So you have that element. Can Walker find himself and be the best version of himself? And can they trust Christopher Sanchez? Like, this is a team of veterans, a team all in to win a World Series, and yet we have almost an unknown or very little known, like a quadruple A pitcher in some people's minds that could take down a postseason start. So here's the way I'm doing it. I'm going Wheeler. I'm going Nola. I'm going Suarez. I'm going with what I know, what I could trust. If they get through that first round and it's a 5-game series, you probably need 4 starters. I'm going to add Lorenzen if he's healthy and he's fresh. I would put him out there as my 4th guy. But Christopher Sanchez is pushing for this, and I just don't love the idea of Taijuan Walker against a big-time offense like the Braves or the Dodgers. That scares the heck out of me. Tucker, what are you thinking? Some things have crystallized. You're like, Nola's come back to the point where you feel better right now. He's going to clearly get a start. But then it's about who's the number 3, and I don't trust Taijuan Walker.
No, and it's weird because, he led baseball in wins for a little while. He picked up his 14th of the year last year. Like, they do win baseball games when he's pitching, but you kind of look at, how the first inning unfolded, and it really happens at least once a game, and there's something to be said for how Taijuan Walker pitches out of trouble and the way he's able to limit damage, but you play a team like the Braves, who look more and more like the 27 Yankees every day, you might not get out of the first inning after loading the bases and giving up 1 run. And in a postseason series, if you give up 4 or 5 in the first inning, that could be it. Like, it could be over. Like, if you're going against Max Fried or Spencer Strider, I don't like your chances coming back from down from a big early deficit. So that scares me to death that he's a guy who can pitch well and can limit damage and has been rather effective, but I don't know if he can be trusted. And it's kind of interesting as we talk about this because I think we can agree there's more rotation depth with this team right now than there was a year ago. The issue is you only have 2 guys who I think are a certainty, and even that is maybe, speaking a little bit much depending on what you think of Aaron Nola. But last year, you kind of look at, how they got through the National League. They played, 11 games, and I think 8 of them were started by Nola, Suarez, and Wheeler. That was it. Like, that was your rotation. Then you had spot starts from guys like Noah Syndergaard and other guys out of the bullpen. Bailey Falter pitched game 4 of the NLCS. I think those spots are better off because you actually have legitimate major league starting pitchers at the back end of your rotation. But the number 3 spot, think about Suarez pitched game 1 of the NLDS and shut down the Braves through 5 shutout innings to start that series and really set the tone. He came in at the end of the NLCS and won that game. He started, early in the World Series. And if he's healthy and hopefully he's back to that guy, you sure think that he has a chance to do that. But I don't know. It's weird because this team is almost backwards when it comes to their rotation in that they finally have a 5-man rotation. Like, all the people who hate bullpen days and openers, you can rejoice. There's a full rotation on this team. The issue is only 40% of it, I think, is actual playoff caliber starting pitching.
Well, you're right about that. And the one thing about game 3 in particular, if they do have to do that in that first round, is the Phillies did this a couple times last year. And Tucker brought up traditional versus, finally a 5-man rotation. The Phillies, I give them credit because they've been progressive in a lot of ways with pitching. I think with offense and hitting, they've kind of leaned on just everyday players and paying a lot of money for guys they could count on. They haven't really mixed and matched much since the 2018, 2019 years. The pitching, I think they are pretty progressive in how they deploy things. They're not afraid to do bullpen games, mix and match. I think they're good at that. And that they're kind of where they should be, compared to the rest of baseball. And we saw it last year a couple times. When they beat the Braves in game 4 of the NLDS last year to win that series, that was a bullpen game. Syndergaard was supposed to go 1 time through the order, and then they just kept going. So if we get to a game 3, against whoever it is, and they don't win within the first 2 of the wild card series, I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's Lorenzen or it's Walker, or whatever, whoever's listed as starting pitcher, but he's out in 8 batters. They just cycle through it, all hands on deck. Here comes Ranger. Here comes Lorenzen after what? That wouldn't surprise me, but that will become harder to do as you go through the playoffs. They need to find that third guy. Last year was Ranger. I still would want to trust Ranger if I had to. I still think he, in a big spot, I trust him to get outs more than anybody else. Walker's got 14 wins, but I'd rather Ranger at a big spot. And Sanchez is pushing. And Lorenzen, we saw throw a no-hitter 2 weeks ago. So a lot of options, but they got to find the right one between now and the start of the postseason. Appreciate everyone listening, watching, subscribing. Of course, our 94 WIP YouTube page. Back tomorrow. Leave a comment, leave a review. Mailbag episode coming up soon. Thanks so much for listening to WIP Daily.